Hello, everyone, and welcome to ProLine. We got a college football Big 12 preview show. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Saad, who runs Las Vegas Sports Services. We're going to take a look at the Big 12. But first, we got the preseason NFL is on the horizon, and we have some early bird specials for those who want to get aboard. Jeff, you have something for Las Vegas Sports Services, 4 weeks in August. Tell everybody about it.
Well, preseason football, unlike what most people think, is a great time to make a lot of money. If you can get the information and you get the trends right, you can really do well in the NFL preseason. And I'm going to give you the entire preseason, all 4 weeks, only $19. And all you have to do is call every access at 1-866-575-8916. So we're about 2.5 months away, so this is the best time to get the best prices. So call LVSS at 1-866-575-8916. All 4 weeks of the 2013 NFL preseason.
Yeah, it is coming right around the corner. Very soft lines, especially when you do all the homework on the games. And Jim Feist has an early bird special for NFL fans. You can get the entire NFL preseason 4 weeks in August, including his preseason game of the year, for $29 at 1-866-841-1655. All right, Jeff, so let's get right into the Big 12, one of the best conferences in the country. And really, last year, the Big 12 was a two-team race. You had Oklahoma and Kansas State both ending up 8-1. But Kansas State took the honors simply because of an early season, a September game, where they were a 15-point dog at Oklahoma, won the game 24-19. That turned out to be a huge difference. Now you got a season where the loss of quarterbacks Landry Jones and Colin Klein kind of makes 2013 more of a kind of a wide-open race in the Big 12. Big 12 has made 7 title game appearances in the BCS era. However, no Big 12 team has reached the title game in the last 3 seasons. Let's start with one of the powerhouse teams in Oklahoma. Does Bob Stoops have a powerhouse unit again?
Well, offensively, there was no question about that. Last year the Sooners were 10-3, but it seemed a lot worse. They had that third game of the season. They had 3 major turnovers and lost that game at home to Kansas State. Then I thought they got back on track of them. Then they get blown out at home by Notre Dame. Then their offense carried them to 5 more wins, and then they get destroyed in the bowl game by Texas A&M. This year they have to replace Jones. It's going to be going to be Blake Bell. He's got a lot of talent. He's a junior, and he's thrown for only 115 yards, but he's rushed for 24 touchdowns in his career. He was a player of the game in the 2011 Inside Bowl when Jones went down with an injury. So, and there are even some people talking about a Heisman Trophy for him. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But the Oklahoma returns 7 on offense, 4 on defense. Offensive line returns 4 starters, and the backfield has Damian Williams. And the passing game returns Jalen Saunders, Sterling Shepard, and Trey Bridgewater. Oklahoma's 43-7 straight up, 23-20 against the spread at home the last 7 seasons. Although last year that didn't, you wouldn't have made much money betting with them against Kansas State and Notre Dame last year. They're 8-3 over the total. And their schedule, they open with 3 home games versus Louisiana Monroe, West Virginia, and Tulsa. Then they have a huge revenge game at Notre Dame on September 28th. The end of the season at Kansas State and at Oklahoma State, so that's pretty tough for them. The offense is going to be low. The defense is going to be questionable. I'll give Oklahoma a shot at 10-2 season, John.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a look at the Texas Longhorns. If any team is going to give Oklahoma a run in this conference, boy, Texas is really primed to do it. This team was very good last year, 9 wins, 4 losses. They had a bowl win over Oregon State. They were a 3-point dog, and they won the game 31-27. But here's the thing, Mac Brown has 9 starters back on offense, 9 on defense, so they're really loaded this year with depth, talent, and experience. And the offense last season made great strides in being balanced behind quarterback David Ash. Now, he started 2 years ago as a freshman, split time, but he really excelled last year as a sophomore. And what was most impressive about him, he was a runner when he first came to Texas, but now, last season, he really developed exceptionally well as a passer, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and the Texas offense really responded to him. They averaged 35.7 points last year per game, 263 yards passing, 171.5 yards rushing, and you got a backfield behind Ash that's really loaded with depth. You got sophomore Jonathan Gray. He had 701 yards. Junior Malcolm Brown and Joe Bergeron. Plenty of guys to give the ball to and provide continued balance. Then there's the defense. You get 9 starters back. The secondary is very strong as far as experience. And up front, this was the key with Texas last year. Huge drop-off and a huge disappointment Texas was on front, which is very un-Texas-like. They were 88th in the nation against the run, and the defense gave up 29 points per game. 2 years ago, they were exceptional defensively. They really fell off. Well, up front, you got the defensive end Jackson Jeffcoat returning, as well as linebacker Jordan Hicks. He's back after missing most of last season with an injury, so there's got to be some improvement up front. And the secondary is solid with depth and experience led by cornerback Quandre Diggs. Keep in mind there are 3 revenge games on deck, and look at how bad this defense was. They gave up 63 points to Oklahoma in that rivalry game, 48 to West Virginia, and 42 to Kansas State. And as far as spread, this team was only 6-6 against the spread last year, but over the last 8 seasons, Texas has been outstanding. A money team, 80-24 straight up, 56-46-1 against the spread. So this Texas team, really no excuses this year, Jeff. They are loaded on both sides of the ball to have an exceptionally good season and probably top 10 wins. Another team in the Big Ten that's always tough to play is Oklahoma State with their wide-open offense. Are they going to turn to being conservative this year or not?
No, Mike Gundy is never conservative. He's one of my favorite coaches, actually. They only have 5 starters back on offense, but it doesn't make much difference because no matter what, Gundy's going to have an explosive offense. Defense has 7 starters back. Cowboys lost some close games last year, 41-36 against Texas, 51-48 in overtime against Oklahoma, 41-34 against Baylor. With more experience, they should win some of those kind of games this year. Remember, they beat Purdue 58-14 in the bowl game. So I never worry about Mike Gundy's offense. The defense has to be improved this year because it was pretty bad last year. Last year, the offense averaged 45.7 points, 332 yards passing, 215 yards rushing, and the returning senior quarterback Clint Chelf and junior wide receiver Josh Stewart. In the backfield, they have Jeremy Smith and Desmond Rowland. The defense is fine at linebacker. Then the secondary has to replace 3-year starter Broderick Brown. The schedule, they open against Mississippi State and Houston, and then they have 2 gimmies against Texas, San Antonio, and Lamar. Fairly tough road schedule. They have to go to West Virginia, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Texas. End of the season at home versus Baylor and Oklahoma. So they're on a 9-4 run over the total after giving up 59, 41, 44, 51, and 41 in their 5 losses. And it's always it's very hard to go under the total in any game that Oklahoma State plays. This year, I'm looking at its a record of maybe I'll go 9-3, although they have a good chance to go 10-2. Just depends on that defense. They really need to improve that defense here, but I'll go with 9-3.
Okay, I'll take a look at one of the Big 12 newcomers, TCU. I mean, this is a team that did have a winning record last year, 7 wins and 6 losses, only 5-8 against the spread. What happened is they had a great start at 5-1 and then stumbled to 2-5. But it was an impressive season. They lost to a very good Michigan State defense, 17-16 in the bowl. But here's the thing, it was impressive because they were rebuilding across the board, and it was pretty impressive to make a bowl while they were rebuilding. And things look pretty good this year for TCU. 5 starters back on offense, including the quarterback. And the defense, very strong defense, has 9 starters back. Coach Gary Patterson, he's a guy who has always been a proponent of a balanced offense. We saw that last year. They averaged 28 points per game, 236.5 yards passing, 152 yards rushing. They're really stocked this season. You get sophomore quarterback Trayvon Boykin back. He was very good as a freshman, 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and the backfield is very strong. You got sophomore running back B.J. Catalan, 582 yards. You got junior wide receiver Brandon Carter returning. He had 590 yards. And the backfield also picks up a running back in Wayman James. He missed almost all of last year with an injury, but he was the leading rusher back in 2011. So a lot of good pieces on this offense returning, and you know it's going to be balanced again because that's what Patterson likes. Now, the defense has always been a staple at TCU, and they were very good last year, 30th in the nation in points allowed. They got a super sophomore defensive end in Devontae Fields, a great talent. And the secondary returns Jason Verrett, one of the top nation's covermen. It's a unique defense that TCU plays, 4-2-5 defensive scheme. Now, the schedule, it's tough right from the beginning as they play LSU, so that'll be no fun. They got to try to avoid getting banged up. And then later on, they got a couple of tough road games at Oklahoma and at K-State. But look at some of the home games. They get Texas at home, Kansas, West Virginia, and Baylor. So they got a good shot at another winning record in a bowl game. And keep this in mind about the Horned Frogs. When they play at home, The last 8 years, 33-4 straight up, 22-13 against the spreads. This team very tough and underrated and undervalued at home. Okay, Joe, how about the Baylor Bears, the rebuilding Bears? They have a shot to be pretty good?
Well, last year they had to replace RG3. That worked out pretty well because Dick Florence did a fine job. Now they have to replace Florence. It looks like it's going to be junior Bryce Petty. Inexperienced, but he's only had 14 passing attempts in his career, but he supposedly has a lot of talent. They need to improve the defense, though. They were last in the conference in yards allowed last year. The linebacking core is solid, but the defensive line needs a lot of help. They returned 4 in offense, returned 7 in defense. They were 8-5 last season, 9-4 against the spread. The offensive line returns 3 starters, including All-American guard Cyril Richardson, and honorable mention All Big 12 tackle Troy Baker. They had one of the top offensive lines, definitely in the conference last year, if not the country. Defense allowed 37 points per game. They finished 119th nationally in yards allowed, 110th in scoring, and 119th in pass defense. They showed some progress at the end of the bowl game. They had a pretty good showing against UCLA when they held them to 26 points. Baylor is 10-48 straight up, 24-33-1 against the spread in his last 58 games as an underdog, and they're on a 9-4 run over the total with, of course, that great offense and the weak defense. But this year, the schedule, they start off with 4 home games. The first 3 are against Wofford, Buffalo, and Louisiana Monroe, so you could probably pencil in 3 wins there. On the road, they have to play Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and TCU. This year, I think it's hard to tell because they have a brand-new quarterback, but I think they're going to eke out a 7-5 season, John.
Okay, I'll take a look at the Texas Tech Red Raiders. There's some key changes to keep in mind. First of all, they had a winning record at 8-5, 6-7 against the spread. They were only 4-5 in the Big 12. But that 8-5 record was not enough to save Coach Tommy Tuberville. He is out. So what you're going to see is a very young coach in Cliff Kingsbury, the former quarterback, and his resume is exceptional at developing quarterbacks in recent years, including Case Keenum at Houston and Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. And he is going to keep the same all-passing all the time Mike Leach-style offense that they have run. Of course, Kingsbury did run the Mike Leach offense when Leach was there. And that's a good thing because this offense of Texas Tech last year was absolutely lights out at throwing the football. 37.5 points per game, 356 yards passing, and 140 yards rushing. That passing offense was second in the nation. Concern is at quarterback where the senior Seth Dodge is gone, so you got the sophomore quarterback in Mike Brewer who's going to step in. Saw a little bit of time, but not much, 375 yards passing, but he completed over 70% of his passing, 4 touchdowns and no picks in a short, safe passing offense. And a guy to keep in mind is the true freshman quarterback, Davis Webb. He's a 3-star recruit. He may be in there for the challenge, so the thing for the new coach is he's got some talent to work with at quarterback, which is great for him, although very little experience. One of the lucky breaks that the offense have for the Red Raiders is they had 2 guys who had over 1,000 yards receiving. Well, one of them is back, and Eric Ward, and he was thinking about going to the NFL early, but he's coming back for his senior season. You throw in the fact that 3 of 5 offensive linemen are back from a unit that allowed just 19 sacks for the entire season last year. So this offense looks very good. And even though we don't think of Texas Tech as a running team, they actually can be pretty good because what happens is they spread the field with that spread offense, and it does create some gaps in the defense. And when they pull those draw plays, it can be very effective. And they do have junior running back Kenny Williams back. He had 824 yards rushing last year, 5.8 yards per carry. So there's going to be no problems really with this Texas Tech offense. It'll be very similar to what you've seen the last years. Potent and quick strike. The defense, though, is another story. An unusual defense. They get 8 starters back, which is good, and they were the second best in the Big 12 as far as yards allowed. All that's a plus, but there are some weaknesses here. That defense gave up 31.8 points per game, so they're involved in a lot of shootouts, and they have a new defensive coordinator in Matt Wallerstadt, so that means this is the 5th defensive coordinator they've had now in 5 years at Texas Tech. The front 7 is going to return intact, which is a plus. The secondary, there are some concerns. They lost some key players, although overall the pass defense was exceptional. This team did not generate a lot of sacks last year, and look at some of the games that they lost. They gave up 59 points to Oklahoma State, 52 to Baylor, 52 to Kansas State, and all 3 of those games were on the road. They also lost 41-20 to Oklahoma. and they give up 53 to TCU, but they won that game. So that shows you when they were bad as far as giving up points, they were real bad. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that. That'll probably continue. And the one thing to keep in mind, it's probably going to be involved in a lot of high-scoring games. If you're looking for a team to go over the total, giving up points but scoring a lot, this certainly is the Texas Tech team that's probably going to fit that mold for 2013. All right, don't forget the Kansas State Wildcats. I mean, is there a better coach in the country than the ageless Bill Snyder?
20 years ago when Bill Snyder was just starting off, I thought he was kind of overrated. I thought that his teams were overrated because he always scheduled the easiest teams he could possibly find for non-conference games. But now I'm a total believer. Bill Snyder, no doubt, is one of the greatest coaches in college football history. Every year in, year out, no matter what, his teams are productive. This year, they have to replace Colin Klein. The rest of the offense is in great shape. The entire offensive line returns, along with running back John Hubert. They have a lot of experience at wide receiver. The quarterback is going to be between sophomore Daniel Sams and junior Jake Waters. Waters had the better showing in the spring game. Plus, his junior college team won the national championship. So right now, I give the edge to Jake Waters. There's been a theme in today's show with the Big 12 defenses. They've all seemed pretty weak. Maybe that's because the offense is so good in that conference, but every team seems to have defensive problems. The Kansas State has one of the worst problems. They lose just about everybody on defense, including a lot of the key backups. They lose the entire front seven. They return 2 starters, both in the backfield. And so that's going to be, if Bill Snyder can pull this one off with another great team, he'll even burnish his credentials even more. Defensively, the safety situation should be among the best. That's one of the bright spots of the defense with Ty Zimmerman, Gerard Milo, and Dante Barnett. Last year, the Kansas State was 11-2 straight up, 9-3-1 against the spread. I don't know if they can equal that again, but with Snyder, you never anything's possible. There's time to figure out places that they have. The schedule was pretty easy again, just like traditionally it is at Kansas State. They start with North Dakota State, Louisiana Lafayette, and UMass, and then they open with the conference with Texas. Then they get Baylor, West Virginia, TCU, and Oklahoma at home. So the schedule is not too bad. It's pretty good, and I would look at Kansas State to go 8-4 this season.
Well, I'll take a look at Iowa State. I mean, this is a team that did make a bowl last year. 6 wins, 7 losses. They lost to Tulsa in the bowl. And just 3-6, though, in the Big 12. They got an above-average coach in Paul Rose. I've always liked him. He's a guy who knows what he can do and can't do with his players. He's very good at talent evaluation. And what we've seen with the Cyclones the last couple of years is a run-oriented team. They don't pass the football well, haven't had very good quarterbacks or speedy receivers. So he's not foolish. He goes to his strength, the ground game, and tries to win close games. With that said, this is going to be a very difficult year for the Cyclones. The offense was plodding, very difficult. 214 yards passing, just 150 yards rushing per game. As you mentioned, you don't do that in the Big 12. You have to score a lot. And I don't see this attack improving. They actually used 3 quarterbacks last season. Well, 2 of them are gone. The only guy left is sophomore quarterback Sam Richardson. He was the best out of the 3. The other 2 guys were turnover prone, and really they settled on Richardson late in the year. He started the last 3 games as a freshman, ended up with 8 touchdowns and only 1 interception, so you can see why Paul Rose likes him. He doesn't throw the picks like the other 2 guys. 541 yards passing, 58% completions. But here's the thing about Richardson that I'm not sold on yet. Those 3 games that he started down the stretch were against Kansas, West Virginia, and then the bowl game against Tulsa. Well, those are all terrible defensive teams. So we have yet to see this kid against average or above average defensive teams, and we'll have to watch him closely when they do play him to see if he suddenly starts throwing picks and turning the ball over like the other guy. The strength of the offense, once again, is going to be the backfield. They do have senior running back James White, 505 yards, 5.1 yards rushing. The other back is Chantrell Johnson. He's been there a couple of years now. He's sitting out spring practice because of a neck problem. That was the same thing last year. So he's very talented, but he's injury prone. I wouldn't count on him. And the wide receiver situation is inexperienced. They're not very fast. So I think it's going to be very difficult for Iowa State once again to score. In fact, I think they're going to be taking a step backwards. And that's a concern, too, is this defense doesn't get any pass rush. And the secondary, which was a strength last year, loses 2 key guys. And it's a defense that On the plus side, they didn't give up any big plays, but they gave up yards, and they could get dinked and dunked on long drives. They really don't have any quickness at the linebacker spot, and they really don't have the ability to put pressure on quarterbacks and to shut teams down. And I see that being even more of a weak spot this year. So it's going to take quite a few upsets for this team to repeat as a bowl, and I don't see it happen. A couple of games to keep in mind. They have an unusual September game against Tulsa, a revenge game. It's a Thursday night game. And it's a Tulsa team that they actually played twice last year. They beat them in September at home, and then they had the non-conference bowl game against Tulsa that they got blown out badly. And then they got some tough road games at Texas Tech, at Baylor, at Kansas State. They got to play Oklahoma, and then at West Virginia. So this road schedule for Iowa State is just brutal. Too many weaknesses on this team, Jeff. I don't see them having a winning season or a bowl.
Okay, when we start to talk about West Virginia is 7-6 straight up, 5-8 against the spread last season. They returned only 3 on offense, 7 on defense. They were 4-5 in the Big 12. They started off 5-0, then they had an 0-5 run, and they lost 38-14 at Syracuse in the bowl game, the Pinstripe Bowl. Coach Dana Horgerson's turned the team into a passing team. They averaged 39 points, 333 yards passing, 172 yards rushing. The passing attack was 10th in the nation. But this year they're going to have to replace a lot of on the offense. The quarterback candidates are junior Paul Millard threw 19 passes last year, and then they have freshman quarterback redshirt Ford Childress. They lost their 3 top wide receivers. Jordan Thompson was a top returning receiver on the squad. He had 85 yards receiving on the year. The team threw for nearly 4,300. The defense gave up 38 points per game. That was 117th in the nation, and they returned 7 starters from that defense, which could be good or bad. Tough road games at Oklahoma, Baylor, Kansas State at TCU, and West Virginia is 16-8 over the total of the last 24 games. There's just too much to replace on offense, and I'll give West Virginia a 6-6 season this year, John.
Well, I guess the theme for this show is that if you like to play totals, you're going to love the Big 12 this year because they're going to score plenty of points, but a lot of these teams aren't going to be able to stop anybody. Okay, well, football season is coming up. If you want to get in on an early bird college NFL preseason special, you can get it with Jim Feist. You get 4 weeks in August, the entire preseason, including Jim's preseason game of the year for $29. 1-866-841-1655. Jeff, how can they get aboard LVSS?
Yeah, the entire preseason. That's going to be including the game. That's going to be all the 5-star players, edge winners for the whole 4 weeks. Just call LVSS at 1-866-575-8916. 1-866-575-8916. Get 4 weeks of the preseason. It's $19. 1-866-575-8918.
All right, that'll wrap up our preseason college football Big 12 show. Make sure you check out jimfeist.tv for more college and pro previews for 2013. Thanks, everyone.